International Forum on Democracy, and I think our last speakers, I have learned from their speeches. So today I would like to make 3 points on this subject, on democracy. My first point is that there's no single model of democracy, no single definition of democracy. I'm a scholar, have been working on research on democracy for decades. And almost every scholar has his or her own definition of democracy. And in the academic circles, we have been talking about, for example, varieties of capitalism. And the British or United States style of capitalism is so different from, for example, like Northern European type of capitalism, or East Asia type of capitalism. I think that's the same as a democracy. Well, even in the West, right? And different countries have different type of democracy. You have a presidential system, you have a parliamentary system, you have like a 2-party system like in the United States, and you have like 6 or even more parties in Germany. Or in Indonesia, we have even more than 100 political parties who are eligible for election, right? For election. So we have to. So since modern time, I think all modern democracies are based on their respective civilizations, culture, and national condition. So, empirically speaking, and successful democracies are based on their own civilization and culture and the national condition. But the failed states or failed democracies are imported. Many years ago, I read a book authored by a French scholar. The book title I still remember is The Imported State. Because, since modern time, many Western countries export their state products like democracy, human rights, and to other countries. And other countries also, whether on volunteer base or forced to accept those forms of democracy. But their experience is not so good. And many democracies have failed. So we have to take it into consideration. Right? My second point is that there is good democracies and bad democracies. So we have to be very cautious. If you want to develop, you need to develop good democracies while avoiding bad democracies. Are democracy good? My answer is not necessarily. And if you look around the world, and in many countries, poverty, even absolute poverty and democracy coexist for a long time, right? Long time. Particularly in Africa, even in our Asia, in Latin America, right? Well, the West always says democracy is good for development, but if you look into the West itself, historically speaking, one man, one vote democracy only started at the 1970s, right? And not so long time ago, actually. For most of the part of time, since modern time, democracy in the West was an elitist type of democracy. Only a handful of people can vote, can take part in politics, right? Majority of people, women, minorities, were not eligible to take part in the political process. So that's it. I summarize the good path of development. You have develop your economy first, then you enjoy social rights like welfare, then you come into political rights. No country so far has realized so-called human rights, many types of human rights simultaneously, right? You have to realize your rights step by step. Economic rights first, then social, than political. Right? In East Asia, we develop like a one-party dominate democracy, like Japan, like Singapore. Right? Those democracies are very successful. And if you look at the statistic, and those economies, they in a short period of time, they achieved rapid economic growth, become an advanced economy, a developed economy. But in many states, including some Asian states, they adopted the Western type of democracy, but their economic, social development performance are not good, actually. And many countries have fallen into so-called middle-income trap, even with democracy. Like we have seen in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, so many countries. They have regular elections, and they have ever since, there's a Western element in democracy, but their experience, economic experience, are not so good. So I worked in Singapore for many years with Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew rarely talks about Western type of democracy. In fact, he's very critical about Western democracy. He always says, Singapore, we are meritocracy, not democracy. So I think we cannot generalize, the saying, right? All democracy is good. Actually, some type of democracy actually even very bad. People, poverty, democracy cannot deliver. My last point and the third point is that China has found and developed the form of democracy which fits best its own civilization, culture, and the national conditions. And I remember my first major research article titled "Democracy and Development, Are They Compatible?" My answer is not, right, as I mentioned last time. So in the past 4 decades, since China's open door and the reform, right, worldwide, China is one of the most successful states, if not the, in achieving simultaneously 3 sustainabilities. First, China has achieved sustainable economic development. When I was a university student, right, at Beijing University here, and China was so poor, that time China's per capita GDP was below less than $300. But today, China's per capita GDP is $30,000, right, in such a short period of time. And at that time, when I read English literature, there was a term called middle class. I even did not understand what middle class means. I had to check a dictionary. But today, China has like 400 million middle class, right, in such a short period of time. Most importantly, like our last gentleman mentioned, Chinese government, China was able to help more than 800 million people out of absolute poverty. Well, all those figures are really, if you looking into the history of world economic history, all those figures point to all different kinds of miracles, right? So sustainable economic development is very important. Like if you're a maxim, you believe economy is important, is the base. We have witnessed. If the economy is good, whether you are democracy, non-democracy, people will be happy. If your economic becomes so bad, whether democracy, not democracy, people will not be happy, right? So don't overemphasize this democracy. Second, China has achieved sustainable social stability. That's very important. Well, many Western countries, like the United States or British, right, they also achieved in the past 4 decades, has a reasonable good economic growth, but their society now become unstable. The rise of populism, right? Many people follow poverty level, right? Like in the United States. Well, the proportion of the United States, the middle class proportion of the United States, is a major story, the decline, the shrinking of the size of middle class. Until the early 70s, the size of U.S. middle class was still about 60 to 70%. But today, U.S. middle class, shrinking to like 50%. That's why that provided the base of the rise of populism in the United States. But China, of course, globalization also affects China's income inequality. Inequality actually, and also is very, very, very serious. But nevertheless, the Chinese government is a government which is deliver its economic good to people, as I mentioned, more than 800 million people out of poverty, absolute poverty. That means China has achieved basic level of social justice, That's very important. That's the base for the stability. Then the third, sustainability is very important. That many Western scholars ignore that China's sustainable institutional innovation, right? That's very important. That's China has the political system, that is the Communist Party-centered system. That system has demonstrated its flexibility, sustainability itself. So when we talk about the modernization in China, I believe the Chinese Communist Party today is the most modernized political party in this world. Of course, I can talk a lot on this regard. I never mentioned my own work, in this kind of forum. But today I want to make exceptional. Lately, I just published my book called "Civilization and the Chinese Body Polity." It took me more than 20 years to finish that book. The book was released by Routledge in London and New York. It's a huge book, 660 pages, right? Originally, the public tell me, you should publish it in 3 volumes. I think I just put together one single volume. It looks good. When you carry a heavy book, you feel proud, right? So I make an exception. I mentioned that book. But in that book, really, I talk about the civilizational-based democracy. Very important. I hope every country can find a form of democracy which fits its own civilization, culture, and the national condition. That's the base for future success. Thank you.